the Royal Rumble. So, quick recap. For those who may not be as familiar, yes, this is just to give you a quick rundown of what it is. Basically, the biggest pay-per-view of the year for the WWE is WrestleMania. That is like the equivalent of like the season finale of the year. It all culminates. It's a big pay-per-view that takes place end of March, beginning of April. This year it's beginning of April. And this Royal Rumble basically is centered around a big match, both in the men's and the women's division. So they each have their respective Royal Rumble match. And it's 30 superstars or 30 wrestlers who are competing in this elimination style match where if you get thrown over the top rope, so it's not a traditional match. It's not you don't win by pinfall. You don't win by submission. If you're thrown over the top rope, you are eliminated. And the last person, last wrestler, last superstar standing gets a world title shot. So the main title, the biggest title in the company, you get to be the main event of WrestleMania and compete for that title. So it's a big deal. It's obviously such a good way to market your biggest pay-per-view because you literally have a pay-per-view in preparation for your biggest pay-per-view. So people obviously like it's such a money grab, but like I buy into it. There's usually very exciting returns. A lot of nostalgic returns can sometimes happen. We did see that in the women's match. Not a lot, but a couple. And yeah, it's just a fun time, man. It's the first pay-per-view of the year, so there's a lot to speak on. There's a lot to just be excited for, and people obviously make their fantasy picks with who they want to win the match, who they want to see in the main event of WrestleMania. So that's where the excitement comes from for those who may not be as familiar with wrestling. And the other thing I did want to comment ahead of this pay-per-view, Kai, Sinat, and Speed were in like the news, or like there was clips and just news circulating that they were going to be part of this pay-per-view, and both of them seem to have streamed during the pay-per-view. Speed actually made an appearance at the Royal Rumble. Maybe we'll get to that, but like in the actual match, by the way, that's what I mean. But yes, looks like there was a lot of excitement coming into this weekend. Yeah, Ray, I know you and I were texting about this, but immediately, any thoughts, any reactions from either of you? And Alexi, I don't think you watched it, but like if there's any, I also want to hear from someone who doesn't watch wrestling, any thoughts.
No, I watched the highlights in preparation to talk about this, and I gotta say, I felt it was more entertaining than regular WWE stuff, just I think because of the whole premise of just, getting knocked out, like out of the ropes, essentially, out of that area. It reminds me of like a King of the Hill almost, in a way, especially when they got multiple dudes in there. So it was actually really entertaining. From the clips I saw, I thought it was cool that, people I've heard of for over a decade now are still there, like John Cena. Then you got Speed getting taken out. But it was cool. It was cool. Penta was way less sus this time. Although he did... Actually, you know what? No, I take that back. When I watched the highlight with Penta, this dude literally picked up the other guy and stuffed his nuts in his face like 3 times. Like, bro, you are a wrestler. You can do so many moves. Why are you sticking his nuts in your face? That is a choice. That is not a random act. But it was cool.
That's crazy. Well, okay.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Listen, man. There's no such thing as sus in WWE.
Yeah, you're not saying I'm wrong. Okay, that's all.
Yeah. Listen, actually, I'm gonna stand on that. There's no such thing as sus in wrestling, man. It's wrestling. But I'm glad to hear that you tuned in to the highlights. I'm glad to hear that you did have somewhat of a different reaction this time around. So, I'm glad to hear it. But Dre, I know we watched, and we're just for the record, don't want to really get into the other matches. I mean, just for the record, we saw there was, in the sense of the singles match or the tag team match, and then there was the ladder match with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. Very quickly, just want to say, DIY tag team, I'm a huge fan of them. I haven't really been super into wrestling as of late, but happy to see that they hold the title. So good match on their part, along with their opponents. So it's MCMG is their name. Motor City Machine Guns. Cool match, as well as the ladder match. Great match. Lots of spots, lots of things to be excited about. I feel like maybe I want, actually, let me shut up. But yes, and then the women's match. Sorry, guys. I just want to acknowledge the rest of the pay-per-view, because I know I know, Dre, you watched the main event, but I just want to give some airtime to the other portion of the match, or of the pay-per-view. Charlotte Flair won the women's Royal Rumble. I know a lot of people are frustrated about that. And this is Ric Flair's daughter, for those who may not know. Ric Flair's daughter is considered the most talented female wrestler on the roster by many people, but she's also, that kind of is a double-edged sword, because she is kind of like the modern day John Cena, or for those who were watching in the 2010s, the Roman Reigns, in the sense of, yes, very talented wrestler, pushed to the top, and seems to always be the default winner. So there's a lot of people who are upset by that. There was a huge pop to Alexa Bliss's return, which I thought was super cool. Alexa Bliss kind of has this Harley Quinn type of character. So I've always been a fan of Alexa, and it was nice to see her back in the ring. So super happy about that. No AJ Lee, no Becky Lynch, and I know Becky Lynch was kind of a reach, but no AJ Lee, which I'll put stress on that. No AJ Lee. I was a little upset by that, but there was a Trish Stratus, so that was a nostalgic entry, and just all around, man. As someone who grew up watching the Ruthless Aggression era of wrestling, it's good to see the sport progress. And this is without, it's not like this is the first time there's been a Royal Rumble match within the women's division, but it's a relatively new concept still. So it's always just great to see that you have a division that has the ability to perform and deliver. There were a lot of great returns, a lot of nostalgic returns. So all around, just great to see this sport continue to expand. And it was a great match. People are underwhelmed by the finale, and maybe that coincides with the men's Royal Rumble, but I personally had a ton of fun watching it. But let's get to the main event. Dre, I want to hear your thoughts. What did you think?
Yeah. Well, honestly, you distracted me, because was AJ Lee rumored to come back for the women's Royal Rumble?
I think I was just, me and a couple of my friends and a lot of people on Twitter were just like, yo, it would be so fire. I think you had mentioned too, Punk had mentioned her recently, and so there were clips circulating of her training, and I'm not gonna act like this is something we deserved. Obviously, I don't know how AJ Lee feels about the business, so I assume, if she wanted to return, she could have and she would have. So I'm assuming that this was just voluntarily herself, just not, maybe she doesn't want to get back into the business, which I totally respect. But obviously, as a fan of the product, as someone who loves the nostalgic aspect of the Rumble, I thought she was returning, or I had a hope that she was going to return, and there were a lot of people who were disappointed by the fact that she didn't. So, was it rumored? Yes, it was, but I'm not going to hold it against the WWE.
Okay, fair. I just don't bait me because I'll be very excited if that were to happen. But yeah, getting onto the main event, the men's Royal Rumble and the final for not final, the final match, I should say. I would just say I know we'll probably talk about a lot of different parts of it, but just to set it up, going into the match, like we've talked about on the podcast previously, check out previous episodes or segments if you don't know. But I'm also returning to WWE after a long time of not watching regularly. Actually, 10 years of not watching regularly. So there's a lot of people I might not be familiar with. But I did know from watching the first Raw on Netflix that this is going to be John Cena's last hurrah, 2025. He's doing his last run, last show in all these big cities and everything, and potentially a last title run. And knowing going into this match that John was going to be in the Rumble, that John already has won 2 Rumbles and had the potential to match the record for 3 wins. And just because I want to see John Cena main event WrestleMania, I'll just set it up and saying I was very much hoping that John Cena was going to win the Rumble. And the Rumble played out. And if you know how it ended, let's just say I was a little bit disappointed that that's not exactly what happened. But I'm sure we can build our way up to that as well.
100%. Yeah, man. I wanted Cena to win as well. I think both of our inner childs really wanted to see that happen. And just for the record, Cena has won 2 Royal Rumble matches in his career. The record for most Rumble wins is 3, and it's held by Stone Cold. So I thought Cena was actually going to tie that record last night, and he didn't. So it looks like Stone Cold still holds that record. So, good for him. But yes, definitely disappointed by that. But I do want to also talk about other things that caught my eye during the match. Rey Mysterio and Penta opening the match. I did not expect that. So for the record and for those listening, my first Royal Rumble that I can remember was the 2006 Rumble. So that was when Rey Mysterio won it. Just a couple of months removed from Eddie Guerrero's passing, and I thought that was huge. He won it from the number 2 spot, went the distance, eliminated Triple H and Randy Orton to win the match, and then eventually went on to main event WrestleMania, beats Kurt Angle, who was my favorite wrestler growing up, and Randy Orton, and wins the world title. So seeing him coming out as one of the first 2 contestants, there was obviously some nostalgia there. So I was super excited just off of that alone. But then to see Penta come out and also to see the crowd go crazy. He was in this really cool light blue outfit. So it wasn't the little skeleton y'all were making fun of just a couple weeks back. So I was just, I was ecstatic from the start. And they had a stare down in the ring. Little handshake. Penta did his little Cero Miedo catchphrase in front of everybody, and the crowd really liked it. Rey Mysterio followed it up with a little 619 chant, which I thought was a little bit all right, you don't do that. That's not really your chant, but it was still cool. It was still great. I think I'm also, obviously, for the Mexican culture, man, I was just happy to see that, man. It was special. But yes, Rey and Penta from the start was huge for me. Any other or anything else that caught your eye?
Yeah, I thought Rey and Penta was cool, especially given the conversation we had about Penta. And I think generally, maybe there's some stat I can go back and look up. I feel like WWE likes to have Rey in the first 2 starting a Rumble match. I feel like he might have the record for being in the first 2 more than anyone else. Cause I feel like there's a few Rumbles I can think of where Rey comes in early. But yeah, I think that was a cool transitional kind of thing. Not that Rey's leaving, but to give the GOAT luchador of the WWE a stage with this new guy they're bringing in and trying to push. And to give him his credit, I said that maybe the crowd wasn't super familiar when he first came on the scene a few weeks ago, but the crowd was definitely like in the know with his chant and that kind of stuff. I thought that was dope as well. And I thought they did a lot of cool stuff. Obviously, Penta lasted way longer than Ray, so maybe they're trying to give him his own little push. We talked about it when we were messaging about this, but maybe a little too long because he spent a large chunk of time laying in that back right corner of the ring, just chilling.
Taking a nap.
For real, like that was yeah, maybe they could have gotten him out a little bit earlier, but I can see they're trying to push a new guy they're bringing into the industry. So, well, not industry, but into this business. So, I'm not too mad at that. But yeah, there were a lot of guys. I know we talked about like how many people that I recognize on the first Raw from Netflix. There were a decent amount of guys on the Rumble. I was like, who is this? There were some I like knew their name, but I never really watched them wrestle. But I thought it was a good field of guys. No crazy returns, at least that I was looking forward to. I know we could talk about AJ Styles, or I know you said you were excited about, but he's not someone like he was like someone who, when I watch wrestling, everyone would always murmur about like, oh, we really wish AJ Styles was in the WWE, but that was never materialized when I was watching, and only after I stopped watching, he finally made that move. So I never actually got to watch his WWE run. I only knew of him as like, oh, he's in these other companies as like the main guy. But so that wasn't like super exciting for me. You know, I was hoping there would be some big return. There wasn't really any other than that. But even then, I thought it was a lot of fun. There were a lot of still big wrestlers that showed up for this one.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I think, well, I mentioned Trish Stratus in the women's Rumble, but there wasn't a lot of nostalgia this Rumble all around from either match. Yeah, I wanted some kind of nostalgia in this match, and there wasn't really much of it. So that's always a bummer, but hey, it was a great match all around, so there's not that much that I can just drag on. I thought this was a very impressive Rumble all around. Speaking of impressive, Braun Breaker, who I just am not super familiar with because I'm just getting back into watching wrestling, and I think every wrestler kind of has to prove themselves in my, not like has to, but like in order for me to get on board, obviously I need to be sold on their ability. Braun Breaker definitely sold me on his ability last night. He's the son of Rick Steiner, so he is a second generation WWE superstar, so good to see him go on a tear. Like he brought the energy. It was so nice to see him just go all out. I think he speared Speed, so he, like, you know, there was also that like little photo op, which, by the way, like while we're on the topic of Speed, I was actually upset that there was a spot wasted on a celebrity. I am never for that. There was a couple years back that like Johnny Knoxville entered the Royal Rumble, and it was like to promote like a Jackass movie, I'm pretty sure, and I was, you know, not a fan of that, not a fan of Speed in this Rumble. It was funny, like I understand, like Akira Tozawa, who's like kind of like a cruiserweight, or was in the cruiserweight division when it was around in the WWE. He was making his entrance, and he's now kind of become a joke, part of Alpha Academy, who's like, what did Alexi call him? Like that stay at Homelander, or like that fake Homelander guy.
Yeah.
That's who he's connected to. Just got injured got attacked on his way to the ring, and then Triple H has this moment while Speed is on stream. So I will say respect to that. Like that's kind of cool. While Speed is on stream, Triple H tells him like, "Hey, you're in the match. Like, go." And he comes out to the World Cup song, which I just was cracking up, but I was also upset. You know, I was cracking up, but I was upset. Didn't like that. Did you have any reactions to Speed joining the Rumble?
I thought it was a bit weird how he was joining in like less than a week after Kai made an appearance. I see it business wise, like, you know, they're trying to grow their audience. Clearly, these streamers have so many people who follow them, so it makes sense to have them on. I just thought they was a bit close together. But it was entertaining for sure. World Cup coming out to that, I got to agree. I haven't heard that song since the World Cup, so it was a bit weird hearing that again. But I thought it was funny how he was kind of introduced and just thrown in there. Although I know he got injured, like that shit looks serious, bro. Like that he got hit hard.
Yeah. You think he learned his lesson? He was in WrestleMania, in appearance at WrestleMania last year, and got RKO'd by Randy Orton. And I remember him like going off later, being like, "Yo, that was real. Like that hurt." So yeah, props to him though for taking a bump. Yeah, I always respect anyone who, I want to make that clear. I'm not knocking Speed for being in the Rumble. I think anyone who, I don't know what his background is with wrestling in terms of his fandom, but I think it's every young fan's dream to one day be be a wrestler, have that experience. So I will say, like, if that opportunity was thrown my way, best believe I would have taken it. So I'm not in any way coming at him. I'm happy for him. Obviously, it's great for his brand to see someone on stream and then like kind of have that coincide with a pay-per-view with a live broadcasting. Like, I thought, props. But as a fan, as someone, I was angry at the WWE for putting him into the match. Barry, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I personally didn't hate it. I think if that was a spot where that's potentially like taking the spot of like a big name in the match, then like that's a different story. But I think if they were like, okay, no one else really adds to the story of the match, let's just do a little fun, because they do fun gimmick things here and there in the Rumble. They like that kind of thing, even with wrestlers. So I think Triple H is very forward thinking, and he obviously had Kai streaming there, had Speed streaming there. He's like, okay, this would be fun to do. I think, like you guys both mentioned, in terms of tapping into another audience as well, I'm not super mad at that. I think the only reason I don't have a problem with it is because he took the bump. I think it's different if Speed just comes in, eliminates, because I think even him eliminating someone is already like on the line. But if he just eliminates someone and then it kind of just fizzles out. But the fact that he took a bump to the level he did, well, I guess 2 bumps to the level that he did, I think that adds to the whole, okay, you can't just come in and play around. Like, you're gonna, obviously it's all scripted, but still he's taking the bumps. So like, you can't just come in and play around. You have to like take your lumps, and there's no, like, you're not gonna cut it out as a superstar. Like, not everyone's gonna be Logan, who's actually competing and actually talented in this. Speed, you're not that guy. Get up out of here. In terms of like the story of it, like, get up out of here. We're not playing around with you. I think that's a fun way to play on that, but also say like, okay, there's levels to this. And I think because the moment also was like super viral, as everything with Speed is, but I think it's also cool because someone like Braun Breaker, who you mentioned before, someone I'm also not super familiar with, but just from that match, and not just with Speed, but like some other spears he had, I was like, this might be the most lethal spear I've ever seen. Like, his spear is crazy. Obviously, like the Speed one is like, obviously he was building up crazy momentum going rope to rope and then hitting Speed with that. But like, just the ferocity of how he hits it is it was actually wild. It was like, I don't know. Like, I still love Edge's spear. Obviously, maybe I'm biased about the nostalgia of that. And like, just the aesthetically how he hits his. I know Edge's isn't even necessarily like the most technical or like coolest spear people have seen. Like, there are other dope spears out there, but that spear, I was like, I kind of want to see this guy wrestle again. And you don't really get that moment without having a ragdoll like Speed to go in there and take that. So I think that there's something cool about it, but I can see where you're coming from.
Good point. Shades of Goldberg, for sure. Obviously, Goldberg has that like build to him, and Braun Breaker is also super built, but he's not Goldberg. But yes, super athletic spear. I'm totally with you on that. So yeah, sold on him. And good point on Speed, man. True. I think, every Rumble has some comedic aspect to it. Usually it comes through like someone like R-Truth. Back in the day, it was like Santino. So I understand that is an aspect of the Rumble. And I'm not, in hindsight, I know I said I'm mad at it. I still would not want them to do it again. Right? But the next thing I wanted to get to was just how also stacked it was. And at the end of the day, like you said, it didn't come in the way of a big name getting into the match, entering the match. So that's a fair point. Very fair point. I think there's also lots of little, I guess you could say, potential storylines that were planted in this match. There was that whole moment with Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns. That can end up being a rivalry that ends up taking place in the future. Jacob Fatu I was very entertained by him. So to see him duke it out with Roman, super exciting to keep that bloodline storyline alive, and seems like they can go into various different directions with it. So good to see that. But all around, man, just towards the end, you had Seth Rollins, you had CM Punk, you had Roman Reigns, John Cena, Drew McIntyre, AJ Styles, who you mentioned, huge fan of him, Sami Zayn. They were all in the match, and just seeing them just one by one entering the ring. At that point, you could feel a transition. There was a point where you had a lot of the mid-card wrestlers, and then towards the end, you got like the more legitimate contenders entering the match, and a lot of them having stare downs, a lot of them having these grand entrances. Roman Reigns had pyro for his. CM Punk, I always think it's so cool when the crowd can join in and sing a theme song together. So to see them sing Cult of Personality, it never gets old. And just seeing how excited that the environment just seemed crazy. And obviously it would be a mistake to not bring up, or would be disrespectful to not bring up, the fact that Jey Uso was also among those final wrestlers. So like I said, man, all around so stacked. I'm like, man, this has got to be a golden era in WWE. I know it's hard to say that as an adult because you always chase that nostalgia and what it felt like as a kid, but just seeing just the star power that was in the ring last night, I was personally blown away.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And especially because of the era we watched, a lot of those names being there, it helped ground the Rumble, where I'm like, a lot of those mid-card guys are the newer guys that I'm not super familiar with. So then when they're bringing out the heavy hitters, and a lot of these heavy hitters, which is kind of sad to see, is that they are on the older end. So I know WWE, they have to build new stars, which is like always the tough transitional thing to do. And maybe that's why you see the ending that we see. But even the person who won it isn't the youngest, so that I'd be curious to see where they go in the future with that as well. But even seeing, because you seeing Cena, Punk, and I'm like, these guys are like, obviously they're still performing. Cena looked kind of like he was struggling at moments, I'm not gonna lie, but obviously they're still performing at a certain level. But like, you just see the gray in their hair and stuff like that. I was like, damn, like these guys are really on the older side, but they're still carrying the business on their back in ways. Obviously neither of them are the champion, but it's just, it was exciting, and it was a really nostalgic moment too to see, especially like Roman. I like Roman, but obviously I mentioned, I realized this is probably on episode 0, so maybe you guys haven't heard me talk about WWE before, but Roman I didn't get to see like his massive bloodline run. I saw more like Shield Roman and that early Roman, but so I don't have like the crazy connection with Roman that a lot of modern fans do. But for me, one of my favorite feuds ever, right before I got out of WWE, and funny enough, Punk got out of WWE, was Punk and Cena. By I guess over 10 years ago now. So seeing Cena enter, Punk enter, Like that was dope for me. That was like a really cool moment just to see those two in the ring together. And then as we were texting about the match, I even said at the time, oh, they have all these like massive guys in here. Oh, it's kind of funny that Jay's still in there. And I remember we were texting about that. I was like, yeah, and Jay's still around too.
Yep.
And we were like trying to predict the winner and like who we want to win, who we think's gonna win. And I never mentioned his name as that, but I was like, oh yeah, he's still around. But I never saw that coming, which I should have, because anytime someone who in your mind you're like, this guy isn't like a realistic contender, if they're still there, like final 4, final 3, there's a reason why they're still there. So they usually get rid of people who don't, like, they solely weed out the people who aren't a part of that final story. So for him to be in the final 5, final 4, final 3, final 2, you're like, Jay's still around? Like, that's kind of weird. Like, they're sending out CM Punk, they're sending out Seth Rollins, they're sending out Drew McIntyre, like they're sending out all these massive names. And this is also part of episode 0 where we talked about how coming back to watching Raw on Netflix as the first one, Jay having this massive, and I mean massive pop coming out with Travis Scott, and the entire crowd's going crazy over his theme song. That was the first time I heard his theme song. I was like, this is a banger. Like, I was listening to it on Spotify after Raw, and I was like, this crowd connection, especially watching the video of him doing it in France even, I was like, this crowd connection is special. Like, there's a very few theme songs, entrances that I've seen have this kind of crowd connection. Like, there's people singing along. Like, Cult of Personality, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, entrance song of all time. When Punk's static hits, that's a special moment. People sing along, like you just said, with this Rumble. But, like, to get people out of their seats, moving, all hitting the same dance move, that's rare. And that's, like, really special. I didn't know it was special enough to make you a Rumble winner, but clearly there's something Hunter sees where he's like, that's something we can harness. And even in the match, like having, like, whenever he hits someone, they're hearing the yeet and all that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of cringe in its own way, but hearing the yeet and all that, like, there's clearly something they're seeing there that even I'm not seeing, because I'm not as tapped in as I used to be, but I can see the logic. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I don't know exactly what the main event match is going to look like, but I can see what Hunter is seeing a little bit anyway.
100%. I agree with you. I think it's so funny now that you mentioned yeet. It's so crazy, and I think this is why a lot, actually, let me not even say that. I think it's so cool that we are in 2025. Yeet was like a thing when Vine was around.
Exactly.
Yeet was a thing like 13 years ago, right? 13, 12, 11 years ago. That was like a thing then, right? And to see a wrestler use that as their catchphrase, and every time they throw a punch, the crowd is in unison chanting yeet. Or like anytime, just anytime he's approaching the ring, or anytime Jey Uso is the center of attention, you have people chanting yeet. Like, I don't understand it. I think there is that aspect of me being like, I have no idea how he got that over with the fans, but to see it happen is so cool to me at the same time, because what I thought the final two was gonna be, I thought the final two was gonna be Punk and Cena, right? I thought they were gonna have, I was thinking it would be so cool if they could have like a 5 to 10 minute wrestling clinic at the very end of the match. Everyone's out of the ring, just them two duking it out, and then have someone win in the end. I thought that was what was gonna happen. And in a way, we did get a little bit of a wrestling clinic, but with Jey Uso and Cena. I want to also acknowledge Logan Paul being among the last 3 and eliminating CM Punk. I was confused by. There was nothing that was going to convince me that he was going to win, but it's not like I knew. It's not like the Uso win, the Jey Uso win, didn't take me by surprise, right? So I think good on Triple H for booking that, and like having Logan kind of pack that heat, draw that heat, and having him be among the last three, having him take out a favorite like Punk out. Good move. If you weren't gonna have Punk win it, at least have his elimination mean something and have him taken out by someone who you don't want the fans to like. So good on that. And man, that last, what I really want to focus on is that last portion with Jey Uso and John Cena on the apron, where they're punching, they're kind of having those punches, those I always love the usual spot is like you have the baby face or the good guy punching, and every time he punches, you hear the crowd go yeah, and then the crowd, when the heel or the bad guy punches, they go boo. So it's like boo, yeah, boo, yeah. That's like a really cool sequence that you get occasionally in certain matches. And it's funny because in this match you didn't get that with the final two. You got yeet, yeah, which I think is a little corny, right? But it was still cool. Like, I was like, this is still fire, because it looked like they were hanging onto the rope. There were periods where Cena was teetering off and looked like he was losing his balance, and I was holding my breath. And in the end, to see him eliminated by Jey, my heart again sank. I stood up from my seat, jaw dropped to the floor. Did not expect to see him win, but yeah, like you said, he's so over with his entrance. There's a lot of people who are getting behind him. The crowd seemed to have enjoyed it. By the end, you would have expected, I would have thought that after something like that, maybe the fans turn against the entire match and start booing. No, you had people getting up out of their seats, doing the dance, and turning up with Jey Uso. So yeah, there's just a lot that happened. So I want to hear your thoughts on that finale.
Yeah, I think it's tough because obviously in my heart I'm like, John's got to pull this out. Like I need it, like as much as SpongeBob
Crazy
needed
pause. Holy.
No, play, resume, everything. As much as SpongeBob needed it down there with Sandy, I needed John Cena to win this Rumble. Like I was like fiending for it. But okay, let's just put a pause on all that. But anyway,
we'll have a Patreon one day, and this is all gonna be on there. But
yeah, for sure,
maybe not now.
But at the same time, I think that's what's special about John as a wrestler and as a person, is that no matter and he knows all the fans were with him on this last ride. We want to see something special for this last ride. The company knows that. Everyone in that arena knew that. But we all also know that we can't have this last ride for John have it come at the expense of what the company's trying to do in terms of building stories separate from him. And if John were to win this Rumble, as amazing as it would have been, I still wanted him to have won the Rumble just for the main event spot at WrestleMania. But if you're on your way out, we all know you're on your way out. There's only so much the company should do really to cater to you in terms of involving you in the main stories, because once you're gone, they have to pick up the pieces from that. So I think, and John knows that, and I think reason why to me John is the GOAT. And I think it's a 1A, 1B, him, Stone Cold, have that conversation. But Stone Cold's probably still the GOAT. But anyway, the reason why John is 1A, 1B GOAT conversation is because for the business, there's no one better for the business than John. Because John knows himself. As cool as it would be for him to win that Rumble, it's important to put Jey over in that moment. And I think that's what makes John so special in a way. And that's what made that moment so special, especially on the apron. We were like, we want John, but Jey will be sick too. But John, this is the last ride, but Jey's next up. And the fans are like, either way this goes, this could be dope. And it's really interesting having two faces battle it out as the last in the Rumble, because really, obviously you could say, okay, the fans get what they want either way, but you do really risk dividing your fan base in that moment. And it was a massive risk to go with Jey. I think the last sequence built up to that beautifully. I think the actual elimination, like the AA back over the rope and he just pushes him off, like that one wasn't too special to me. But I guess they have to, in a way, it still is Super Cena in a way, so they still have to like not let him go out in some crazy way. Like it's still a little like sneaky kind of bam out of there real quick, and then like, but I think in a way it has to be quick, just so it's really hard to process it. Like that shot they have of Cena with Jey in the background, it's like amazing cinematography. Like that's something I think Hunter has been really special with in terms of directing these shows. But yeah, that moment was super dope, and now it's up to them to nail this road to WrestleMania.
Yes, 1000%. I hear you on that final shot where John has that like shocked and like disappointed look on his face. I think people, like, to the outsider, it may look like cringy, like, you know, but I thought, like you said, cinematography, people have been throwing around the term cinema. That I thought was cinema. Like you have someone who clearly had high stakes. There were high stakes for him to win the match, and you see him lose and you see the disappointment in his face, and I just thought that was crazy sick. Like just seeing the way it ended, and then he goes back into the ring towards the end, and I was even holding my breath a little bit. I was like, is he gonna like turn heel? Is he gonna like low blow Jey Uso? Like, is something about to happen right now? Didn't end up happening. He just shakes his hand and like gives him the congrats, which is in very typical Cena. But I that definitely blew me away. And while we're on the topic of best for business, I don't know if you tuned in for the post-match like press conference. I wasn't planning on doing it, but then I saw then I had a friend text me. He was like, yo, watch it. And if y'all have time, I would suggest that y'all look it up. It's like 3 minutes long, and he goes on this like, he's like, no questions, I just want to say, goes on this 3-minute rant on why it's best for business for him to win the 17th title, for him to break the record. So I think they're very clearly just going to drag this story on. So I'm excited to see how it plays out over the next year. And, you know, wasn't the winner I expected, wasn't the winner I wanted, but it looks like they're really trying to build this story up. So I can't be mad at that. Alexi, I know I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with the point of like, you know, albeit I only watched the highlights and don't know that much, but I got to agree where cinematography wise, seeing Cena at the end, just his reaction to losing was probably the most like interesting part of that. I mean, I felt really invested in that moment of like, damn, like he actually feels this way. Like he's really like portraying these characters' feelings like so well. I mean, dude is a great actor and other things as well, but obviously his roots in WWE, like it felt very personal in that moment. And yeah, that's all I had to say.
No, I love that.
Yeah, fair. I 100% agree. Especially, seeing John. I recently watched. I was very late to it, but I recently finally got around to Peacemaker.
I still gotta watch it.
Yeah, but he impressed me in that. And obviously, like you said, that's from years of being in this industry. But that's very interesting. What you said, Eric, as well about his post-show press conference. I definitely want to go check that out, because I think it is important to build to the 17th title correctly. And in a way, Cena winning the Rumble is the easy way out. That's just like, let's give him the Rumble, main event WrestleMania, Cena wins the title. That's just the easy story, and that would have been great in its own way. But now that Cena has come this close to winning the Rumble, loses it as the final two, and now he has to build his way to that title in another way. When he finally does get there, that's going to be even more satisfying. And I think he knows that. I think Hunter knows that. And I think obviously the industry knows that as a whole. So now the question is just going to be how. Because I don't even think it's an if. I think John has to win that 17th title. So the question is going to be, how are we going to get there? And I think that's something now I'm going to follow along because I want to see that as well.
100%. 100%. It's how you sell tickets. And but the beautiful thing is too, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, every time, and like I said, maybe I'm feeding into it, but there's that doubt that creeps in. It's hard for you to see this and be like, man, like there is a chance that they may just not give it to him because it's his, like you don't want him to win it in, let's say, October and November, and then have him just hold the title for a month or two. Like there has to be some kind of length to it. So when to the run, so when you don't give him the Rumble victory, you're wondering like, man, like there is a chance that he may just not win this title, but that's obviously what's gonna have you tuning back into it. So, like I said, happy to carry along and follow along that storyline. They're doing great so far. I'm invested, so they're doing their job. But yeah, any other thoughts? I know that was also a long-winded conversation, but any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm good on this one. I think it was obviously I didn't watch the entire pay-per-view, but at least the Rumble match, I think it was entertaining and a good, even if disappointing in its own way, it was also a great ending in its own way as well.